Hello and welcome to another historic video. Today we're checking out this green Eldrazi combo deck that's looking to cast some of these huge Ugin Planeswalkers or various Eldrazi Titans for free, assuming we can enable Hideaway on our Fight Rigging. So this is really the centerpiece of the deck, a 3-mana enchantment that lets us Hideaway 5 to look for some of those expensive cards and exile them face down. And then if we can get a creature to 7 power, thanks to the extra +1 counter we get each turn, we can now cast one of those hidden away cards for free. And to help enable Fight Rigging, we're playing the full set of Slumbering Trudge from Strixhaven, which we can cast on turn 1 for X equals 0, and then even though it enters with a few stun counters, we still get a 1-mana 6/6, which is what we really care about. And then we can also find the Trudge with a Green Sun's Zenith for X equals 1, so we've got additional redundancy. And then the Trudge is also very synergistic with the Fanatic of Ronas, which if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, can now tap for 4 green mana, so we can maybe start hard casting some of those expensive spells as well. So that's really the core of the deck, Fanatic with Trudge and Green Suns, and then of course the Fight Rigging. And then to help smooth out our draws, we also have the full set of Malevolent Rumble, which can maybe look for a Fight Rigging or a Trudge if we don't have one already, and then also make a spawn token in the process. And then we also have the full set of the Sowing Mycospawn, which can also help us ramp, maybe even blow up an opposing land if we cast it with Kicker, and we do need some colorless mana to help enable that. So we also have a nice toolbox of one-of lands that the Mycospawn can find, including Bojuka Bog to give us a bit of graveyard hate, which is pretty important in Best of 1 Historic, since there are lots of combo decks out there looking to reanimate their creatures, which we now maybe get to exile. Then a Blast Zone can be useful interaction against some of the Aura strategies that often have a lot of 1 or 2 mana permanents that we can try to blow up. Cavern of Souls can make our Eldrazi uncounterable against blue decks. Gemstone Caverns we're not going to find with the Mycospawn, but it's just a nice line to have when you're on the draw if it's in your opener to give you an extra mana. And then Ugin's Labyrinth we'll often find as well, and is another big reason why a strategy like this could work, as it's a land that can tap for double colorless, assuming we imprinted a colorless card with mana value 7 or greater when it entered. So having those expensive Eldrazi in hand is still useful to help enable your Labyrinth, even if you're maybe not going to cast a 15 mana Emrakul if you happen to draw it. And then of course Eldrazi Temple did get banned in Historic, so that's no longer available, which is also why I'm not playing with Kozilek's Command, which would be a lot more reliable if we had both Ugin's Labyrinth and a Eldrazi Temple to enable it early on, to maybe help us ramp and also offer a bit more graveyard hate, which would certainly be useful in the format. And then we also have some other one-offs we can find with our Green Suns, such as Endurance, which also gives us some graveyard hate. Can also easily evoke it by exiling a green card from our hand if we draw it, since outside of the green spells we've already covered. We also have 8 of these modal dual-faced lands, like the Disciple of Freyalis and Turntimber Symbiosis, because these are still reasonable hits of a Fight Rigging if we maybe don't hit some of our more exciting cards, because the Disciple can still sacrifice a 7-powered Trudge to gain 7 and draw 7 cards, and the Symbiosis can maybe still put a huge Eldrazi in play, even if we maybe miss out on the cast trigger, and these are still green sources that can also be pitched to an Endurance. And then we also have a one-off Halfling, can also maybe help us ramp early on, makes colorless mana, which is useful for the Mycospawn, as well as for casting a Devourer of Destiny, which requires double colorless mana. And if we have the Devourer in our opening hand, it will also smooth out our draw, since we now get to take a look at the top 4 cards of our library and maybe choose one that we get to keep on top, the rest gets exiled, and casting the Devourer is still totally reasonable as kind of a mini Ulamog that will still exile 1 permanent that's at least 1 or more colors, so this one does not get rid of lands, unfortunately. And then I'm playing a bunch of one-offs here just to make things more interesting. Even though we could just run 4 copies of Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, at least some of the 7 or 8 mana cards are more realistic to hardcast thanks to our Fanatic of Ronas, whereas we're not often going to cast a 15 mana Emrakul, even though it's the most powerful one to cast of Hideaway, as we get to take an extra turn and then annihilate the opponent for 6 when Emrakul attacks. We have Ugin Eye of the Storms, which can draw extra cards and exile the opponent's permanents when casting more colorless spells as well. We've got Ugin the Spirit Dragon, a nice blast from the past, can plus to deal 3 damage to any target, -X can also be an effective board wipe, and the ultimate is certainly within reach. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger can exile 2 permanents when we cast it, including lands. And then the original Ulamog destroys one thing when we cast it, but also has Annihilator 4. And then Emrakul, the Promised End, can also be very fun to steal the opponent's next turn and maybe mess things up. Can also benefit from a full graveyard through Malevolent Rumble, filling it up, but it's not like we have a ton of different card types. Plus, some of these Eldrazi Titans also get shuffled back alongside the graveyard if we happen to mill them, so these are a bit of a non-bow with Emrakul, but I'm just happy to have one of each. And then Grove of the Burn Willows is another green source that maybe gains the opponent some life, but it can also generate colorless mana to maybe help kick a Myco spawn or cast a Devourer of Destiny. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing a Lurrus deck. We have double Fanatic, no Trudge, no Fight Rigging. Devourer can maybe help find one of them. Even a Green Suns can enable Fanatic to make a bunch of mana. So this isn't terrible. And probably go for another Rumble here. Play tapped Disciple. Turn 2 Fanatic. And then turn 3 Rumble can maybe find a Trudge and immediately make 4 mana. Opponent on not an Aura deck, maybe a Berserk kind of aggro combo deck. So yeah, Fanatic might get answered. Opponent's got a Fragment Reality. Alright, we get a Trudge in return. So not a terrible trade. And Emrakul to draw. So probably play a Fanatic, so then next turn I'll have an easier time deploying Malevolent Rumble. Could also Rumble into Fanatic to be fair. But yeah, may as well save the spawn tokens. Possible they have another Fragment Reality. Could also hit the Halfling. Opponent's got a Stoneforge, so it's more of an equipment deck. Although, with Lurrus, they don't have any 3-mana swords that they can tutor up. Maybe Umezawa's Jite or Colossus Hammer makes sense. So next turn they can threaten lethal with a Scamp if they can put the hammer on it. But it does not give trample, so can maybe still chump with a spawn token. And get to untap and Disciple the draw. So this turn, start with a Rumble. Finding Fight Rigging, that's what we wanted. Cast Fight Rigging. Could also take the less risky path and try to just cast the Devourer by shocking in or bolting in the Disciple land, since we can make a second colorless with a spawn alongside the Grove. But yeah, we're here for Fight Rigging, and Ugin seems like a pretty good one. I mean, Emrakul's grade 2 to be fair, but it's been a while since I've cast an Ugin. So yeah, let's go to attackers, see if this works. And then what to do with Ugin, just take out the Scamp presumably. They can deal 1 damage. If they target the spawn, I'll just sack it for mana. Play another Rumble. And Mana Tithe, I'll pay for. So that's what they had as interaction. Grab another Fight Rigging. Probably fine to play this tapped. And pass it back. So we've got at least 1 blocker for Stoneforge. The Outfitter can make it so they can equip Colossus Hammer for just 1 mana. So that's a nice combo. So if they have another 1 mana removal spell, they could maybe deal with Ugin. Opponent's just going face. Yeah, I'll trump. He could also have a fling effect to deal another 11. So better safe than sorry. Devour does not exile the hammer itself. Only colored permanents. So yeah, we can struggle to deal with the hammer. And yeah, opponent's gonna fling onto Ugin, it seems, with the sellsword. So Planeswalker down. But luckily we picked up another Fight Rigging. So we can try again here. Finding not the best set of cards. If I go for Ugin's Labyrinth, I'll still be able to play it and then cast the Devourer. Might be the pick. Can also put the counter on Fnatic at this point. Play my Labyrinth, pitch Emrakul. No attacks, and then cast Devour second main, exiling the Outfitter. So we bought ourselves some time. And yeah, with another Fnatic, I'm not too far from casting Emrakul. With the Mana Confluence, they can actually cast a Sellsword. They could also look into putting a Lurrus in hand. And yeah, Sellsword equipped with Hammer is still the biggest creature in play. Another Green Suns. So yeah, probably just get another Fnatic and then plan to cast Emrakul. Green Suns for 2. Get another Fnatic. Pass a turn. Grow my creatures some more, but the plan is Emrakul. Could have maybe put more counters onto the Fnatic, so that if they somehow answer both large creatures, I can still make Fnatic up to 7 power, so it enables the other copies to then cast Emrakul. But I'm happy to chump a Sellsword here if needed. Opponent puts Lurrus in hand, plays an Ornithopter. At least it loses flying with the Colossus Hammer, so they can't fly over for 10. Sellsword does attack. I think I still double block, could get punished, but this would make sense. So they can move the hammer onto Ornithopter. But yeah, the card that matters is Emrakul. And how often do you actually get to cast it, as opposed to cheating it in play somehow? Can pay for Mana Tithe. And our opponent scoops it up. Once we attack with Annihilator 6, our opponent's not going to have many permanents left. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and we've got double Ugin's Labyrinth and a bunch of very expensive Eldrazi. This hand doesn't do much unless I find green mana. Then I can Green Suns to maybe get a Trudge, but even then, what are we really doing? Maybe I can Green Suns for 2, get a Fnatic, and then we've got a bit more mana to try and cast a Devourer. Still feels like I can do better. Alright, this has potential. So I could keep the Endurance in hand if I'm afraid of facing a Reanimator deck. And then turn 1 Trudge, turn 2 Fnatic. Probably don't need the Green Suns as much. And then I can Rumble to try and find a Fight Rigging. So turn 1 Trudge. Let's see what we're up against. A tapped Boggart Bog. So this could be a Charbelcher or a Balustrade Spy type of deck. So I can wait on playing the Labyrinth. And for now play Fnatic. Endurance could certainly be useful if they try to combo off with a Balustrade Spy. But we'll see. For now, Shambling Ghast can be sacrificed to Calling the Weak, so they can already make 4 mana here. And yeah, there it is. So we'll see what the plan is. A Lively Dirge to probably search up the Balustrade Spy and then try and get it back, but then we can just use Endurance. I guess there's no window for me to remove the Spy before they get it back. So we'll have to let this trigger resolve. And then I believe by shuffling their graveyard back, Creeping Chill doesn't even trigger. So that saves us 12 damage. Now is the time to Endurance, so they don't get all those Narcomoebas, and Arclight finishes back. Target my opponents. Now the problem is they can still combo again if they have another Spy. And yeah, as we see, Creeping Chill doesn't even trigger. But yeah, for now I can Trudge for 3. And we can start applying a bit of pressure. May as well play the Labyrinth. So Endurance kept me alive. Question is, do we still have enough to get there? Opponent's gonna start attacking with a Balustrade Spy, maybe. But we're still at 17. So we definitely have a faster clock. I should have taken some time to look at the opponent's graveyard before I shuffled it back, but it did not seem like they were on Charbelcher. So they're purely on Balustrade Spy. We saw Progenitus, which is how they avoid decking themselves, so they can maybe get another attack step in. And now Fight Rigging, alright. Let's see if we can get lucky. We hit an Ulamog, that's gonna be the pick. Doesn't seem like they have removal, so may as well target the untapped Trudge, exile your 2 lanes. And yeah, now it's gonna be a lot harder for them to combo, although still not impossible. They could just go untapped lanes into another Calling the Weak and cast a second Spy. But we put ourselves in a great spot. It's gonna be a tapped land instead. And now they seem dead on board. Alright, let's just go for another Fight Rigging. Spin the wheel again. Myco Spawn getting Bojuka Bog is also a play that can sometimes matter, but since our opponent kinda goes off and mills their entire graveyard in one turn, I don't think Bojuka Bog is gonna be particularly useful. But yeah, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have Green Suns to get the Trudge. No Fight Rigging, although I do have a Devourer to maybe find something helpful. And then Malevolent Rumble can also dig for it. So yeah, on the play we can give this a shot. And we found a Trudge, saves me from tutoring it up, so yeah, I guess we'll keep that. And then just play this tapped on turn 1. So turn 2 could still Rumble, and then if we find Fight Rigging, I can Trudge plus Fight Rigging in the same turn. Opponent's gonna try to mill me. It's not gonna work out too well, considering we have Emrakul and Ulamog that shuffle themselves back alongside the entire graveyard. But yeah, for now Rumble still seems like the play. And I'll take... Myco Spawn's not bad. A Labyrinth can pitch Ugin or Devourer for an extra mana. Sure. Possible our opponent wants to just mill themselves with a Tidecaller. We're about to find out. So as per colors. Okay, so then... Can Green Suns to get Fanatic of Ronas. Pitching probably a Devourer, which our opponent already knows about. So Green Suns for 2. And then I can still play Trudge afterwards. So the next turn I could cast an Ugin already. Opponent's got an Archive Trap, which we enabled with Green Suns. So they are trying to mill me. And yeah, unless our opponent's got cards like Surgical Extraction to exile the Eldrazi before they get shuffled back, they're gonna have a very hard time milling me out, as a second Archive Trap has hit the stack. And yeah, there's the shuffle from Ulamog. So we'll see if our opponent's got a solution. They do not. So that nullified the double Archive Trap. And now Brain Freeze with Storm. Yeah, that's probably not going to work out too well. And outside of Ulamog, there's also Emrakul that shuffles back. So Ulamog is back. Rinse and repeat. So that's one of the advantages of having some of those Eldrazi Titans in the deck. You sometimes get a free win against the mill decks. Not that there are many in the format, to be fair. Something like a Hideous Laughter could exile the Eldrazi, so then they're no longer in circulation. But yeah, let's see if we can resolve an Ugin. We'll plus. And cast a Rumble. Opponent's going to erode the Planeswalker, fair enough. I'll get a basic in return. And now just cast a Fanatic. If they mill a Fanatic, we could also Eternalize it, so that's another downside of milling us. Our opponent is cycling now. Alright, let's Rumble, see what we can find. Mycospawn seems fine. Can cast it with Kicker. Blowing up a Watery Grave. And getting... Let's go for Cavern. Don't think we care about their graveyard too much. And then I could technically get back Devourer and cast it. That's probably worth it just for the added pressure. And then I can avoid sacking both spawn tokens. I do have to exile something, actually. At this point, I guess we don't care about Fanatic too much. Yeah, it's not optional. So, could have waited for a Tidecaller to show up. And now Fight Rigging could also maybe hit something juicy, but our opponent has seen enough. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing a Lurrus deck, so presumably Auras. We have Trudge plus Fanatic, a Labyrinth to make extra mana. So then I'm not far from casting a Devourer. So I'll try it. Of course, hoping to top deck a Fight Rigging. But yeah, hard casting Devourer, plus we get to take a look at the top 4 cards to select whatever we want to maybe find the Fight Rigging. And a turn 1 Sentinel, so definitely points towards the Aura deck. What does Devourer want to keep, if anything? Mycospawn's not particularly exciting. Does give me a play I can make with 4 mana from Fanatic. Although I feel like I'm gonna need to get pretty lucky this game. So I'll decline. Find a Rumble instead. Turn 1 Trudge. So if I top deck Fight Rigging, I can already cast it on turn 2. Opponent with an Amped Raptor finds a Light Pause, I believe. Yeah, that's a very nice hit. So now if they have any 2-mana aura, they could also get a Sheltered by Ghosts to mess up our plan. But I think our plan is still a Labyrinth, pitch Emrakul, and then cast Fanatic. And then next turn I can make more plays, including potentially Devour of Destiny. Opponent did have a Sheltered by Ghosts in hand. We'll see if they go for Fanatic or Trudge. Goes for Fanatic. We had a backup Trudge, as it turns out, so they definitely chose the correct one under these circumstances. And now Shard Mage's Rescue to maybe give Light Pause haste. So yeah, then I'm not gonna get another turn. So pretty much need to top deck Fight Rigging to have a chance. And that is not a Fight Rigging. I also don't get another look at it with a Rumble, because I don't have a green source in hand. So I appear to be dead. I can cast Trudge and keep it back as a blocker, but I'm still taking 3 from Raptor and Sentinel, so then I'm still dead. I guess a Rumble could hit a green source, and then I can technically still play Fanatic as an extra blocker. And then I don't think I can pay the tax. This is a green source, but it's going to cost me 3 life. Gemstone Caverns is not quite going to suffice. Alright, let's go out on our own terms then. GG's, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We've got Trudge, Fanatic, and then both Rumble and Devour can dig for Fight Rigging, so give it a try. And there's Fight Rigging. Sadly, Emrakul is exiled. If they play a discard spell right now, they won't see the Fight Rigging yet. Opponent's a Reanimator deck, it seems. Alright, so could already be staring down some huge creature on turn 2. Opponents with Glimpse maybe milling themselves. So for now, still go for Fanatic. Will give us more options. And Prankster. So yeah, definitely more of a Reanimator deck. Iona we can dispatch with a bunch of our colorless cards. And we get to go off with Fight Rigging, so that's the important part. Do I Rumble first? Could also Fight Rigging and then still play Trudge to start beating down for 6, which is maybe still better. And we hit Ugin the Spirit Dragon versus Mycospawn. Honestly, don't hate Mycospawn, since that can get Bojuka Bog and blow up a land if we kick it. Might actually be better than Ugin in this spot. So then I want to make sure I can pay the kicker cost, which I can, and then I can still Rumble and find Endurance, which is good insurance against Reanimator decks as well. Ulamog gets shuffled back alongside the rest of our graveyard. Go to attackers, enable Hideaway, cast Mycospawn, pay the kicker. So you lose probably Overgrown Tomb, and I'll get a Bojuka Bog. Seems like a fair exchange. And our opponent scoops it up. Bojuka Bog plus Endurance is just too much for them to handle. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. This hand has a bit of mana acceleration, with Halfling, a Labyrinth, maybe pitching a Devour, and then double Devourer to improve our draw steps. That being said, I do not have a Trudge or a Fight Rigging, so we're pretty far from setting up that combo. If I'm hoping for maybe a Myco spawn, I can cast it even on turn 2. And that maybe gets me closer to casting Devourer. So maybe that's the plan. Yeah, I'll try it. Opponent with a Prismatic Vista. And getting a Swamp. And a Thoughtseize. Presumably taking the Halfling as our only turn 1 play. So Devourer triggers. Could grab a Fanatic, although I don't have a 6-powered creature to go with it. Yeah, Fanatic without Trudge is not particularly exciting. So I think I keep the Green Suns, so then turn 2 I get the Trudge, and then if I top deck either Fanatic, another Green Suns for Fanatic could also work. Or we could simply top deck a Fight Rigging, and then we're in business. Probably pitching Emrakul to the Labyrinth, since Devour is more realistic to cast. And another Ugin.
I'm late for class.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I do Green Suns for Fanatic instead. Just to give me a bit of mana acceleration. And if it gets removed, we can still eternalize it. So top decking Trudge would give me 3 extra mana of Fanatic. So then I could already cast a Devourer. Thoughtseize will have a look. Probably taking Ugin. So our opponent on a blue-black control deck. Myco Spawn was a great draw. Won't quite be able to kick it yet, but yeah, just casting it to get an extra land seems great. And then Cavern of Souls is a consideration to make my Eldrazi uncounterable. Could also get another Ugin's Labyrinth, which will give me more mana to cast the Devourer in the first place. Which I also don't hate. And hit you for 1. So next turn I could technically cast this, exiling Tamiyo, unless our opponent can interact. They can also transform Tamiyo, but then we can just take out the Planeswalker. And this is one matchup where having all these cast triggers of our Eldrazi is useful, since we still get some benefit even if they get countered. Opponent bouncing the Fanatic, so now I need to top deck a land. Found an Emrakul instead. So we'll hit for 3. And replay Fanatic. Once we cast Devourer, we get closer to casting Emrakul. Opponent will draw with Quantum Riddler. They are down to 10, mostly from their own doing. Double Thoughtseize, some fetch lands. And yeah, opponent scoops it up. They're unable to deal with the Eldrazi menace. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We've got Green Suns to get the Trudge, and then a Fight Rigging. Missing an expensive colorless card for Ugin's Labyrinth. So won't necessarily be able to do anything super early. But yeah, slow and steady wins the race. So we can start with a tapped Symbiosis. Turn 2 Zenith, turn 3 Fight Rigging. Well, let's see what our opponent's up to. Turn 1 Forest, no play. Halfling's a little late to the party, but yeah, I think we still go for a Trudge here. Opponent Mountain Cycles and Oliphant, so likely a Living End combo deck. So yeah, on turn 3 with Violent Outbursts, they can already swap the graveyards with everything that's in play. So Rumble filling the graveyard is relevant, Mycospawn getting Bojuka Bog is also relevant. I think I still go for Fight Rigging here. Rumble just to fill up my own graveyard, so we make an opposing Living End less powerful, was also reasonable. Opponent cycles Riverwinder. Possible they have a Force of Negation. Although if they do have Force, then they cannot have any 4-mana Cascade cards like Bloodbraid Elf, so then they're really just counting on Violent Outburst, and Emrakul has to be the pick here. So let's see if we get to cast our Eldrazi Titan on turn 3. And yeah, our opponent's gonna scoop it up here. So if they did have a Cascade card, I could have cast it and then declined to cast a Living End. So we could have found a few ways to maybe mess with our game plan. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We've got 3 lands basically, and then Green Suns for Trudge into Fight Rigging. Yeah. And then even a Devourer to maybe look at the top 4 cards. Can maybe even play a turn 1 Trudge, if we find it. Opponent with a Noble Hierarch, okay. And no Trudge, is there anything I want? Not particularly. Would have taken an Ugin's Labyrinth to speed things up, but I'll decline. Draw Mycospawn anyways, and then just play a tap land for now. More likely to want to cast a Disciple as opposed to the Turn Timber Symbiosis. Opponent with a Mirror Room. Making another Noble Hierarch, alright. But I think I still Green Suns for now, and then hope to hit something juicy off Fight Rigging next turn. A Leyline of Abundance makes sense with all the Hierarchs. But yeah, opponent's tapped out. And we get to spin the wheel with the Fight Rigging. And yeah, these are all pretty great, but 15 mana Emrakul takes the cake. As I get to annihilate the opponent's entire board next turn when I attack with Annihilator 6. So yeah, this deck certainly packs a punch. We can technically combo on turn 2 with an Ugin's Labyrinth and our Fight Rigging, and then if we hit something exciting off Hideaway, the game could just be decided on the spot, but we still have a decent backup plan of hard casting some of our spells thanks to our Fanatic of Ronas, so that's also very useful. Now the deck will be a bit of an underdog against other linear strategies, like maybe Storm Combo or some of the Reanimator decks if we don't draw enough Graveyard Hate in time. So then if we don't have our best opening hand, we could be in some trouble. So yeah, that's kind of the coin flip nature of Best of 1 Historic right now. A lot of fast combo decks, so you better come prepared. But yeah, for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.